Hey, beautiful people of the internet, how are you guys doing today? Hopefully great. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at Koumei. Now, this would be the part where I can actually go and give you guys a nickname, but given this current time, I can't actually think of one. As per my message, I do apologize for the lack of content. Lately, I haven't really had too much time, or at least the amount of time that I used to, because I've got a lot of stuff on my plate. But it is life and we're always going to be adapting to it. Anyways, this is Koumei and this is the elemental primer. To summarize this build, Koumei spreads a lot of elemental damage to the targets of her choice, making her ideal for melee builds. #condition overload. If you guys didn't know, for every unique elemental status effect that's affecting the target, you'll gain 80% extra damage. So the more elements that enemies have been affected by, the more damage your melee weapon will deal. So starting off with a passive, every 60 seconds, one of Koumei's weapons will be infused with a random element that lasts 60 seconds. This includes your primary, your secondary, and your melee weapon. Before I continue with the abilities, I want to talk to you guys about the dice mechanic at the bottom right. Every time you cast an ability, the dice roll a new number. If you roll a 6, your next ability will enhance your next ability. Each ability does something else. So in other words, if you guys are able to go and roll triple sixes, then your current ability will be enhanced. Now I am excluding Helminth onto this particular part because the dices are only exclusive to Koumei and her abilities. So it's either you'll proc even more elemental damage or you'll be able to go and spread even more elemental damage, if that makes sense. So remember, every time you guys cast an ability, you have a chance of rolling a triple six. Rolling a triple six will then give you a much enhanced version of your ability. So I'm just going to let you guys know right off the bat that I'll be butchering all of Koumei's abilities just because the fact that she is Japanese based and the Japanese do have, I don't want to say funny words, but they do have an interesting amount of words used. Especially they make them sound so exciting. The first ability, known as Koumei, essentially you surround yourself with the entire area with these threads, which if the enemies touch, they'll be inflicted with random elemental status effects. Rolling triple sixes, the threads will then inflict the enemy with one of every status effect known to man. So you guys are talking about your primary and your secondary elemental damage. The second ability is called Omikiji, which will actually give you a random challenge which will appear tailored to your current mission. Completing the challenge will then grant you a random decree which can actually give you random buffs. Now if you guys are able to roll triple sixes and then casting Omikiji, you'll be able to get a free decree without the need to go and actually complete that particular challenge. Next up is we have Omihari or Omari, I don't know how to pronounce this word, and this is your survivability. You surround yourself with charms. These charms will prevent the enemy from damaging you, so instead it'll start to heal you. A roll of triple sixes will grant you invulnerability for the duration of a single charm. Finally, we have Banruku, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Just like Neja, you immobilize a group of enemies and adding even more stacks of elemental damage. Rolling a pair of sixes maximizes all current stacks and increases the range of Banruku, which is very, very, very good. Alright, so before I run you through all the builds, I also do want to mention to you guys one more time that we are going to be using Ensnare because we are going to go and use Helminth. And as you guys can tell, we've actually replaced the decree ability for Ensnare, which Ensnare is a good ability. It's always great to have grouping, especially if your abilities are group based, and also it provides crowd control. However, if you want my honest opinion, I'd rather replace Omihari with the Helminth ability, therefore we can have also the grouping and of course the increase in decrees, because I've also heard that the decrees are relatively powerful, and also seeing how the decrees work when it comes to the circuit, you'll be relatively OP, especially if you guys have like 20 to 30 different decrees in one single instance. The only drawback is you need to survive. With that being said, let's talk about the ability. So as you guys can tell, here is a build for Koumei, and we haven't added any Forma because this wouldn't be an episode of budget builds now, will it? For our aura, we are going to be utilizing Steel Charge, and yes, it does give us even more melee damage. However, we're mostly going to be relying on its ability to give us even more mod capacity. The more mod capacity we have, the more mods we can go and fit onto our build. Essentially, it's a form of freedom. Next up is we are going to be using Transient Fortitude, Archon Vitality, and Blind Rage for even more power, strength, and essentially more damage. Now Archon Vitality just doubles our heat damage. Now I understand that Koumei doesn't always go and deal primary heat damage. However, there is a chance that you'll be able to go and proc heat damage, and once that chance does get affected, then you'll be dealing whatever heat damage you'll be applying. A lot of people probably won't be adding Archon Vitality. That's fine. You guys can always just go and add more range or more efficiency. Once again, it's entirely up to your guys' playstyle. Next up is we are going to be adding stretch for even more range, just for our abilities can have a much bigger area of effect. Next up is we are going to be using prime continuity, therefore we can just balance out the longevity of our build itself. Next up is we are going to be using streamline and fleeting expertise for more ability strength. Remember, we don't want to get caught with our pants down, and this is mainly because of the fact that if we want to go and enhance our ability, we want to make sure that we can always have those triple sixes rolling. Therefore, we can always have the enhanced version of our ability. By us having a high efficiency, or at least a decent efficiency, we'll be able to go and spam all of our abilities, therefore giving us even more chance of rolling a triple six. Next up is we are going to be using a primed flow for a much bigger energy pool. Therefore, we can have a better energy economy. Next up is when it comes to the arcanes department is we're going to be using Steadfast and Molt Augmented. Steadfast, which will actually once again help us roll even more triple sixes, giving us even more attempts of just, not only not nuking our entire energy pool, but also allowing us to actually cast those triple six rolls. Therefore, we can have a much better version of our current ability, or an enhanced version that is. So Steadfast just allows us to go and cast 3 abilities free of charge without the cost of any energy. If you guys get the maxed out version, it's going to be at 20%, but in my case, it's going to be 17%. And of course, Molt Augmented to give us 60% power strength for every enemy we go and kill. My bad, not 60% power strength for every enemy, it's 60% power strength in total after you guys have killed 250 enemies. And you guys are probably wondering why so much power strength. The reason for that is because I like to see big boy numbers. If you guys go ahead and take a look at the first ability, as you guys can tell, the damage is going to be 63.5 times the damage. And this is without Molt Augmented. I don't know about you guys, but I like big boy numbers, and I like just killing an entire room and also having the opportunity to go and nuke them with my melee weapon of choice. So your melee weapon of choice doesn't really matter. I highly recommend bringing something that's very good when it comes to condition overload and has high damage and of course a decent amount of crit. So in my case, I am going with the Sylvia and Aegis Prime. The reason for this is because I forgot I actually had this weapon. In fact, I forgot I actually put Forma onto this build. Now, as you guys can tell, we are going to be utilizing condition overload, and this is the biggest key factor when it comes to this build. If you guys do not have condition overload for this particular melee weapon or any of your melee weapons, you don't have to use Sylvia and Aegis, you could use something else. But the biggest key factor is this particular mod, just because the fact that you're going to be hitting the enemies with so much elemental damage, it just makes sense to go and add this particular mod. Otherwise, you're going to be losing out on a lot of damage. But essentially, the build has a combination of both elemental and critical damage. We've got ourselves our Gladiator Might and our Organ Shatter for our crit damage. We've got ourselves our Galvanized Seal for our critical chance and increase to our critical damage even further. We've also got ourselves Prime Pressure Point for even more base damage. Berserker Fury, because therefore we can just start swinging our weapon as fast as humanly possible. And of course, we are going to be using Galvanized Elementalist to increase our status damage even further, along with our status chance if we decide to go and get a melee kill. Essentially, this is a combination of both crit damage and status damage. And in order to push it even further, we are going to be adding an arcane called Melee Exposure, which basically it's going to enhance or encode our weapon with corrosive damage depending on how many times we decide to go and cast our current ability. Now, because we are playing as Koumei and we are actually going to be recasting a lot of abilities, this particular arcane will constantly be at maximum potential. As you guys can tell, we are only going to be getting a stack of 240% additional corrosive damage on our melee weapon. Now, because this weapon already has, heat, we're going to be hitting the enemies with, heat and corrosive, along with whatever elements Koumei decides to go and hit the enemies with, along with condition overload, and of course our damage mods of choice. We're also going to be adding molt impact to increase our overall heat damage, because if you guys didn't know, heat goes right through the armor, and because we like to go and fight a lot of armored units, it makes perfect sense to go and hit the enemies with these two weapons. And your stance doesn't really matter, just make sure you do have a stance, therefore you can take full advantage of the increased mod capacity. So we're currently in the simulacrum here. I'll show you guys exactly how this particular loadout does work. So first things first, we're going to start throwing in some enemies, pick up some energy, because at the end of the day, if you got no energy, then what's the point of mods? Then we're going to start hitting them with our number 1. First, we're going to start grouping them with our ensnare, hit them with our number 1, then hit them with our 4th ability, and as you guys can tell, they are absolutely dead. But if you have those guys that do occasionally survive, then you can just finish them off with your melee weapon. And look at that, I haven't even maxed out my combo multiplier, and I was already able to 3-shot kill the enemies. Now it's going to be relatively difficult to try and demonstrate how the melee aspect of this loadout works, but essentially all you want to mainly do is just group them up with ensnare, hit them with your 1 3 times, then hit them with your 4th, and then start attacking them like so. And occasionally, that's the thing I don't like about Koumei, is that the damage isn't that consistent, because it's purely dependent on your dice roll, which in this case is going to be luck. That's not entirely a problem, because at the end of the day, because we're hitting the enemies with so many elemental damage, we'll be able to go and nuke them. So we're going to do it one more time. So spawn the enemies, go up to them like so, ensnare them or group them, wait until they're fully ensnared, hit them with your 1 3 times, hit them with your 4th, and then start attacking them. And the nice thing is that I'm actually quite glad that doesn't kill them immediately, because then it shows you how effective this particular loadout is when it comes to priming the enemies with elemental damage. And that's why we've always got arcane steadfast and of course some efficiency, because at the end of the day we are going to be relying on the dice roll, because as you guys can tell, we currently have 3 6s. Therefore it just means that our next ability will then be enhanced. So if you guys are able to cast a triple 6s, you'll be able to go and nuke the enemies in one singular instance. Ladies and gentlemen, I make some pretty awesome Warframe content, so if you guys would like to go from 0 to hero as fast as humanly possible, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and take a look at the rest of my videos. There'll be some links down for you guys in the description, and of course it will be suggested to you guys at the top right. So once again, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and take a look at those videos. If you guys have enjoyed the video, do remember to leave a like on this video. It always helps me out substantially. Spartan, click the subscribe button for more Warframe videos and streams. We do currently have a Zaku Prime Access giveaway, so if you guys would like to be a part of that particular Prime Access giveaway, I highly recommend you go ahead and take a look at the details down below. There will be a there is a link to a Discord server, so if you guys would like to go and join that giveaway, go ahead and join a Discord server and look for the giveaway section. Therefore you guys can just go ahead and join it and take part, and maybe become a lucky tenor that could win Zaku Prime Access.